Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Registered Nursing Board Meeting Day 2. Today is November 22nd, 2024. My name is Dolores Trujillo, and I have been appointed by Governor Newsom to the role of the Direct Care Provider, and I am the current president of the board. Vice President and Board Member Neelu Patel.
Good morning. My name is Neelu Patel. I'm the Vice President of the board, and I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the advanced practice role.
Thank you. Board Member Jovita Dominguez.
Good morning, Jovita Dominguez, appointed by Governor Newsom in the Education and Licensing.
Thank you. Board Member Patricia Nguyen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tricia Nguyen. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the public member role.
Thank you. Board Member Vicki Granowitz.
Vicki Granowitz, appointed by Senator Tony Atkins in the public member role.
Thank you, Vicki. Board Member David Lawler.
Good morning, David Lawler, appointed by Governor Newsom in the public member role.
Thank you, David. And Board Member Allison Cormack.
Good morning. My name is Allison Cormack. I was appointed to a public member role by the prior Speaker of the Assembly.
Allison, can you increase your volume for us, please?
Sure. Is that better? I think it's just that
Much
I'm
better.
not feeling well. Okay. Good morning. My name is Allison Cormack. I'm a public member, and I was appointed by the prior Speaker of the Assembly.
Thank you, Allison. You want to say something to David?
David, can you?
Yeah,
David, are you able to increase your mic just a little bit as well?
I think so. Is that better?
That's
Much
way
better.
better. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. And
You're
then just for
welcome.
the public to be aware, we do have quorum here in DCA. We will go ahead and establish it. We do have 2 board members attending remote because they're not feeling well.
Thank you, Lori. And Lori is our board's executive officer, Loretta Melby.
Thank you. I'm Loretta Melby, or Lori, and I am the board's executive officer appointed by the board.
Thank you. And our board counsel, Harry Skoletsky. Get your mics on.
Okay, Harry Skoletsky, temporary counsel for the board, substituting for Reza, who will be returning, thankfully, next week.
Thank you, Harry.
I want everybody to know this was the first time we're hearing this. Are you
Okay.
serious?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to now celebrate, not because we didn't like you, but because we really love Reza.
All right, our quorum has been established, and we will now move to item 2.0 or 12.0, general instructions for the format of a teleconference call. BRN moderator.
Good morning. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board reaches the point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, I will provide instructions on how to use the WebEx question and answer feature. We will also query the in-person location for any public comment. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when the board members or BRN staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during this meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute the microphone automatically. Thank you.
No, that was yesterday. Just a continuation.
All right, item 4.0, this is the report
13.0 and let them know that we don't have,
14.
yes, we need to let them know that we completed everything for 13.0 and we're starting in open session.
Okay, the board has completed its board business up through 13.0, and now we will continue on to item 14.0. This is the report of the Enforcement Investigations and Intervention Committee, EIIC. This is chaired by Patricia Nguyen.
Thank you very much, Chair Trujillo. Before I start with item 14.1, I really just want to thank our board members, Cormac and Lawler, for hanging in there in spite of not feeling well. So I just appreciate so much your dedication to this work. It's so important. Thank you. So we're going to move to item 14.1. We're going to get a report from the executive officer on actions taken after the approval of the board motion from the August 22nd, 2024 board meeting regarding the requirement that participants work in direct patient care, the requirement that participants work passing narcotics, and if an IEC recommendation extends the length in the program beyond 3 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori for this, and thank you very much, Lori.
Thank you. Additionally, we will also kind of share some general IP statistical data. That was one more bullet point there, and that is on the page 6 and 7 of the board meeting materials. And so in goodness, probably January of this last year is when we heard from the public in one of our board committee meetings that there were some implementation issues with some interpretation of our uniform standards. And getting that communication out and having understanding of that, we started hearing those complaints. We immediately jumped into action and we started looking at the various things and with the intervention program. And in the February board meeting, we agendized kind of an overview for our board and our stakeholders on what the intervention program is and how it works and how it's managed and what are the various kind of processes that kind of intertwine with that. And so we do have a Maximus vendor that delivers the intervention program. We have IEC committee members that evaluate the intervention participants on their progress through the program. We have the program itself and we have board staff. So there are various layers in here. Throughout this process, we've heard many, many months of public comment, both at the IECs, in our committee meetings, and we noticed extra board meetings and extra committee meetings so that we could really get a handle on this. I believe we met in May, June, July, August, and we came to the August board meeting where this motion was made. This motion was made by our board members after hearing public comment and after the assignment back in, I believe it was June, where they asked me as the executive officer to kind of deep dive into the process and give a report out. When this motion was made, it was to suspend the imposition of the direct patient care requirement unless there was additional evidence of patient safety or patient harm, kind of an issue. And so the next part of that was to suspend the motion, the imposition of passing or work. It says participants work passing narcotics. And so with that, again, it doesn't mean the IECs cannot ask for this. It means that they have to have additional evidence to support them asking for this. This all goes to show on uniform standards number 12, where it says that the participant with various items, they also have to demonstrate that they are able to practice safely. And so for your reference on page 4 of the EIIC materials, that Uniform Standard 12 is down there with 5 bullet points. The first bullet point is not applicable to our intervention participants. The second one is. And then 3 and 5 are pretty easy to demonstrate. So they demonstrate a consistent, sustained participation in activities that promote and support their recovery, including but not limited to ongoing support meetings, therapy, counseling, relapse prevention plans, and community activities. And then they also have to have continuous sobriety for 3 to 5 years. The number 4, which is in question, which is what we're trying to kind of get a handle on here, is that demonstrate that he or she is able to practice safely. It was understood on an individual assessment by the intervention evaluation committee that there were people that they felt had to do this in order to demonstrate that they are able to return to practice and practice safely. One of the biggest contrasting areas that we have with probation and intervention is that when a person goes into probation, their license is noticed. And so we heard yesterday in public comment, there were some probationers that said, I would like to have this removed. I would like to have this not reported to nurses. I've completed my probation. Can we take it off? There are laws above the Board of Registered Nursing that do not allow for that to happen. So once it is on your license, it is there. I believe it's 10 years here in California. And then nurses is a national data bank, and they report to a provider data bank all disciplinary issues, and we do not have the authority over their system. And so that does stay on there, and that is considered depending on the law of the various states when they're going to license them. And so there was some comment yesterday that said, you know, they're having a difficult time getting jobs because of that. And that is one of the reasons why we do have this intervention program. The intervention program is under our law, and it does state that it is a confidential alternative to discipline program. And so that confidential piece is there is nothing noticed on your license when this happens. And when you return to practice after completing the program, everything is destroyed and you've completed the program, and there is no record that you were ever in this program. And the intention of that as well is rehabilitation. This intervention program is both for mental health issues as well as substance use issues. And so with that kind of understanding, there will be times when narcotic passing is required and there is additional evidence to support that. There will be times where they will want them to work in direct patient care as long as there's additional evidence to support that. And there will also be times that we extend the program. It is a 3 to 5 year program. And that is directly related down on number 5 as well, is continuous sobriety for 3 to 5 years. There are times where a person will enter a program and it'll take them 6 months, 8 months before they get a sobriety date. There may be a time where they're moving through the process and they have a positive test, and that may update and change their sobriety date then as well. And you will be extended 3 to 5 years after that because you do have to have that sobriety date. Those are laws. Those are laws that we cannot change without going through a very large process. A regulatory process is what would have to happen if we decided to change these uniform standards. And it would have to be a regulatory process with the Department of Consumer Affairs and the 8 healing art boards that are underneath them. We are not BRN specific with these uniform standards. We do have regulations. We do have statutes that are underneath our Nurse Practice Act that also influence this. Statutes would require legislative changes. and regulation, we can update. Our board did in February of last year when this came forward in front of our board for the first time, voted to explore regulatory options to address any of the issues that we are finding and discovering in our intervention program, or just to provide clarification. So with that said, in August, we did have this motion by the board, and that information was shared out to all of our IEC members, as well as all of our nursing support group facilitators, as well as our vendor. And that did go out on September 5th to everybody. They had links to the August board meeting as well, where the discussions occurred, where I provided a lot of clarification on some of the other issues that were brought up. There has been continued education provided out by board staff, by the vendor, and then I do receive emails. DCA has received some emails, and we're continuing to provide some additional clarification. In this process, we have had IECs continue to make the motion to require direct patient care, as well as continue to make the motion to require passing of narcotics. Additionally, there have been some motions where they do require the person to continue in the program past 3 years. I have reviewed 20 of those. They have come in front of me. I know on the stats below, there is a cutoff date, so it does say that there, reviews sent to the EO is 22, and then it'll say that there's some that are pending. If you do the math, we're only at 14. I was able to complete others, but because of our posting deadline, that doesn't get captured. So I have completed 20 reviews, and some of them have been supported. Some of them do have the evidence to support the extensions. Some of them have the evidence to support the requirements for direct patient care, or support the requirements for narcotic passing. Yes.
Thank you, Lori. Could you tell us what that might look like, just to give us a little bit more, it can be high level. I'm seeing you a little uncomfortable with it.
I'll have to do very high level because it is a confidential program.
That's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we do have we have just over 200 in the program, but if I start going into specifics, it then becomes not confidential. Some of the extensions come around a sobriety date, and if that sobriety date comes up, that's absolutely supportive of what the IEC would need to do. Some of them are, I'm trying to pull up my email here really quick. If you guys just bear with me for 1 second, because I do take notes on these so that I can communicate that to the staff. And so I want to make sure that I have them. Just loading here. Bear with me real quick. So one of them, there was a sobriety date reset. So that was definitely one. They have just you have to go 3 years. And so there is one that had a sobriety date reset. So they were extended in their program. Another one, there was one that had multiple minor violations. And with that multiple minor violations, the IEC asked them to demonstrate compliance. And so as you guys were able to see in that uniform methods that is in the package, it says demonstrate a consistent and sustained participation. And so what the IEC was asking is to demonstrate 3 to 6 months of consistent or sustained participation. So it wasn't lengthened, 3 years or anything like that, but there was multiple minor violations with their agreement. A lot of them have not been supported. So a lot of them have been returned. Not to say that they couldn't be supported. And so I want to be very clear about that. So what is provided to me is, as the IEC is kind of adopting this process and learning this process, they may have made these motions that could be potentially legitimate motions, but they didn't support the evidence. They didn't send the evidence to me to review, or that wasn't captured accurately. And so at that point, if I don't have evidence to support their decision, then I kick it back for a re-review. If on the re-review, there is evidence there, they are completely able to submit evidence. And then it comes back to me, I review it. If the evidence is there, then it continues to move forward. It is very important to kind of clarify my role in this, is that is not me overturning an IEC decision. I do not have that legal authority to do that. In our law, it is the 5-member IEC that makes these recommendations. I am just doing a review piece to ensure that it meets the board's motion, which says they cannot do this without additional evidence. And so my only role in this is as a quality assurance, essentially saying, is there evidence? If there's not, it goes back. They provide evidence. I accept it, and I make a statement that says evidence supports the extension, and I flip it back, or evidence supports the imposition of, and I flip it back. What we've seen to date, though, is a lot of kind of just support in adopting a new process. Really clarification. There's been a lot of reach out on what that motion meant. Some of the questions that come forward thought that they had to just give a reason as to why they gave it versus having evidence. And so there was clarification provided on difference of why versus providing evidence. Another area of clarification that came through was on the statement where it says suspend the imposition of the requirements that participants work passing narcotics. And so there was clarification that was needed, is whether or not that meant only having access to them, or whether they had to physically do the motion of getting the medications out of the Pyxis or Omnicell, or a locked box, and then delivering them to the patient. And so there was some education provided around that as well, that access and working are the same thing, and that is not a requirement that could be used to move forward. And so there has been some additional discussion in that. One of the areas that were kind of brought back forward again is that our IEC participants may believe that this is part of a path that they need to go in order to ensure that they are safe to return to practice. And so I started doing some reviews of other IP programs, just very general, basic reviews of IP programs throughout the United States. Again, similar to what I said yesterday when we're looking at nursing programs and nursing curriculum, is every Nurse Practice Act is different. And every state that has a alternative to discipline program implements it differently, uses a different vendor, and has different laws around it. Our IP program is different than some. One of the programs that I wanted to make sure that I brought forward to kind of talk about they take a participant completely off work for the entirety that they are in their program. It is a shorter program. It is a 1-year program, and they take them off for that entire time. They do not allow them to work. And then upon successful completion, then they are able to work. So our goal with meeting with board staff and the vendor is to get the participant back to work as soon as possible. There is a process with that. You know, they do that clinical evaluation that has been discussed multiple times. And if they're deemed not safe to return to practice, we do have to get them another clinical evaluation that shows that the practitioner believes that they are safe to return to practice. That has been something that has really been spearheaded by the staff to keep an eye on that, to make sure that that does not get missed going forward. And that allows them to go back into practice sooner, and that we have that supported documentation that does that. When they go back into practice, what typically happens is they go into a no access role. So they're able to go in and work as an RN, but they work as an RN without patient care and without medication access. There are many, many roles that an RN serves with their license. It's vast. Even up here, we have an educator RN here. I'm an administrator RN. Dolores is a direct patient care RN, and we have an advanced practice RN right there. None of us do the same role. And I could tell you I 100% do not do patient care anymore. So if I was a participant, I would not want to go back to patient care. And in fact, I would be a danger if I went back to patient care without some support. It's been greater than 5 years since I've been at the bedside. And so I would need additional support as well to ensure that I'm safe on that manner. So knowing that these people are progressed through the program, they go back, they have to do 6 months in a part-time fashion because of the requirements and uniform standards. Through that process, doing that 6 months, they can progress from no patient care to the IECs granting patient care, and the IECs granting them access to narcotics and other, dangerous drugs and devices. That access, again, is not a requirement for them to work. That is one of the biggest things of getting that education out is we have, as the IECs have reviewed them and they review their participation in this program and whether or not it is continuing to allow them to be successful, that they're gaining benefit from it. That review process says, yes, I see that you're working your program, you're maintaining your sobriety, you're getting your help on your mental health issues, you are progressing forward. I absolutely can see you going from no patient care to access. We do have to understand at that point that that nurse has the ability to not work in patient care, and that nurse has the ability to not work passing narcotics. And that does not mean that we cannot successfully complete them. And so a lot of the re-education and stuff that's kind of coming around from that is really making sure that they're evaluating the entire program and all aspects of that. One of the biggest things that when I was reading a bunch of the articles and really looking at the evidence that is out there, which there's not a lot, I wish there was more, it doesn't directly correlate working with safety. It doesn't really correlate working with a continued sobriety. And so that's what we need to make sure, that there may be times absent of a law change. And so I just want to put that out there. Our law does not have a requirement that says you must work as an RN to successfully complete the intervention program. You have to demonstrate that you're safe to return to, sorry, let me get the language just so I have it. demonstrate that he or she is able to practice safely. So there are some people that do interpret that as, in order to demonstrate they're able, they must actually do direct patient care. In order to demonstrate they're able, they must actually pass the narcotics. Other people interpret that as the reason that you are not safe was a mental health issue or a substance use disorder issue. You are now on top of that. You've managed that. Therefore, you are now safe. And so that is why when we go to an IEC, the IEC has two medical practitioners. Let me just make sure I have this right. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. They have RNs, they have physicians, and they have a public member, and there's 5 of them. And they all have to have experience in substance use disorders as well as mental health issues. And so collaboratively, they will have that discussion and they will decide what they believe is best for that participant. The vendor is able to participate in those meetings as well. They do have their CCMs that are there with them. The participant is able to be there and present in the question and answer session with that. And our board staff is present as well.
Lori?
Yes.
Oh, okay. This question is interesting to me because it seems really open-ended. There aren't really any, other than sobriety, a sobriety date. It doesn't seem like there's actual criteria that we use or the IEC members use to identify. It's kind of like they have a feeling. I mean, it seems like it needs more concreteness somehow.
There is the concreteness in the uniform standards. And so each one of those uniform standards build on the other. And they have very clear guidelines that you test this many times a year. In the first year, you test this many times a year. In the second year, you're required to do check-ins. You're required to do these. They have very concrete items that are laid out, but it is what the IEC's role is to evaluate that participant through the program. And that program is individualized for each person.
Is there a standardized checklist that gets used in the evaluation so that you know everyone is where their deficits are, why they're being returned and not graduated? I'm just thinking that it would be helpful if there was, based on what's in the standards, so that we could see, or that, you know, am I making any sense?
There's a standardized process. And so in that process, there is an IEC committee. That committee meets, they meet with the CCM, they meet with our staff, they meet with the participant. In that process, they evaluate what is available for them in the vendor system. And so that has their reports, that has all of their random drug testing, that has the results of them, that has their check-ins. They have that. There are forms that they do utilize to make sure that when they review every aspect of it. But it is not a standardized process. Again, a standardized process requires regulation, and it requires that to be followed absolutely. We have to individualize these, or else we are doing underground regs.
I get all that, but there are still ways to do a checklist with all of the different factors to substantiate why somebody is being denied or what they need to do. So it can be individualized. I've seen checklists.
Yeah, we have forms that the IEC participants, not the participants, sorry, the IEC members utilize to ensure that they're reviewing every
They
aspect.
do. Can we see what that looks like?
I think Yvonne's got one right there. We will at that point, now that this is being presented to a board member and passed here, we will have to post that on materials and be available for the public. But you can bring that up
That would
and share
just
that.
be really helpful.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then Vicky, since it is the only copy, if you could share that with the board members, that would be great.
Actually, this isn't what I was thinking of.
So,
Lori?
yes.
This isn't what I had in mind, but I'll send it around.
Mhm.
That's sort of not detailed in terms of looking at the factors that would deny somebody from graduation.
I did just get a message, board moderator. Can you elevate Virginia Matthews in the attendees list, please, and make her a panelist? And then just for everybody to understand, again, just a reorientation, this is a new meeting. Virginia Matthews is the Maximus representative, and Maximus is our current vendor.
She's not in the attendees.
Is it Ginny, maybe? Ginny?
Hold on.
Yep.
Nope, she's not there either.
Can that be emailed to David and Allison?
We can. Do you have it? Okay. Are you able to email now, though, to them? Okay. Thank you. So that form that is being passed around, and I actually have a copy of that on my computer as well. Give me 1 second. I'll pull it up. I think that the big thing that we need to go back to is what the role of the intervention program, the IEC committee. And the IEC committee in Business Professions Code 2770.8 says the committee created under this article, their primary responsibility is to review and evaluate the recommendations of the program managers Each committee shall have the following duties and responsibilities, and that's to evaluate the registered nurse who requests participation in the program, to review and designate those treatment services. And so that's what you see on that form is a lot of treatment services that they review and designate, to receive and review information concerning an RN, and that comes from the vendor. And the vendor does provide that information, and that is given to them to review, to consider in case of each RN participation in the program, whether he or she may, with safety, continue or resume the practice of nursing. And that's right in alignment with Uniform Standards 12. And then to call meetings as necessary, and then to make recommendations to the program manager regarding the terms and conditions of the intervention agreement for each RN participating in the program, including treatment, supervision, and monitoring requirements. And so that form is in alignment with what the law asks of our IEC, but they do have that requirement that the board has now said, please provide the evidence for the decisions that you are making.
Obviously, I only had a minute to look at it, but it almost looks like an intake evaluation with identifying what are the things that they need to do, but it isn't a checklist of, I'm talking something simpler. What's their sobriety date? Did they meet their sobriety date? Almost like when we get the discipline on,
Mhm.
Did they miss check-ins?
They-
Did they fail?
They get that. That is not a form. That is a report that is pulled from Maximus and provided for them for each participant that they are going to evaluate at that committee. They have their sobriety date, they have their intake date, they have any of their missed calls, any of their missed tests, they have whether or not they had additional mitigating factors, they have their attendance in committee, in support groups. They get that, and that is a standard. That is not a form, that is a report that comes to them from the vendor's system, and that is there and available to them.
Okay.
So look, Yvonne.
It's not, can you hear me?
We can hear
Okay.
you. Yeah.
It's not a report that they get. It's they have access to the vendor's portal that has all that information, historical and current, on that participant from since when they entered into the program. So they have all the information, but it's not a report that is generated. It's in the portal. It has different tabs. So if you wanted to see how they're doing on their random drug testing, you could check that tab or check that portion. But all the information is available to the IEC members.
Mhm. Mhm. It does. So the board president just asked here real quick. And she said Uniform Standard 12 has all of that information of what you need to evaluate for completion. And it is prescriptive. It is those 5 that are part of our meeting materials that needs to be evaluated. What the concern is what the IEC uses to deem that they are safe that they've demonstrated they're safe to practice, and whether or not that requires working, whether that requires direct patient care, or whether that requires narcotic pass. So we have returned participants for review. There was one person that was returned for review, and on that review, they did test positive. So that we weren't able to move forward in the way that we hoped to for completion, because there was a positive test. There were another one that was asked to be re-reviewed, and they lifted the requirement on that re-review. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 that were asked to be re-reviewed. They've already gone back in front of committee, and they have been completed. So those that imposition was removed completely, and on the lifting of that imposition, 4 of them were able to be completed from the program without any additional work with that. And then there is others that have had those review from me, gone back to IEC, and they've reconfirmed the prior IEC's ask, which is to do that. It is now going to come back to me. Again, if there is no evidence, it will go back in front of an IEC again, because the board's motion does state there has to be additional evidence. And I'm not receiving that additional evidence on a lot of these reviews. And so they do have to go back for a re-review.
So the ones that after they were denied, there wasn't evidence that could be substantiated for why.
Yes. There was the reason they gave that. And some of the reasons could have been that they had diverted prior going into the program, or they, various things that occurred that brought them to the intervention program. And because they had been working in a very monitored manner, in a non-patient care way, there has not been any additional evidence of patient safety issue. And so the committee members have been having some difficulty saying, well, there's not going to be evidence of additional patient safety issues because they haven't worked in that capacity where there may be that evidence. But the redirect on that one is we can have a person that is an RN that never has to work in that area again. That requirement is not there. We don't even have a requirement in our law that says you must work to successfully complete the IP program as an RN. So those, when we're looking at regulatory updates, those might be where we have to state you have to work as an RN for this amount of time for this amount. And then we may want to do clarifying into the regulations that says this many months or this many hours, whether it has to be direct patient care, whether it has to have access, because right now, none of that is in our law.
All right, I'm sorry that I'm being thick, but
That's
this
okay.
stuff is making my head explode. And I realize I've had a lot of caffeine, but it isn't black and white, and somehow I wish it could be a little more, so there isn't this going denials that then are accepted. I mean, somewhere there's some disconnect if they're being kicked back, and then, am I making any sense?
You are. And I think it's never going to be black and white because every person's individual and every situation is individual and every person's program is individual. So it's never going to be black and white. You do A, B, and C and you're done. But that's why we have an evaluation committee. That is why there is a 5-member evaluation committee, all professionals, all that have a history in mental health and substance use disorder, because they have to evaluate the participants' ability to gain.
I understand that. You don't need to go
Okay.
through it again. My issue is, it seems like there should be less people having to have you reviewing them.
Agree.
And that's the piece I'm trying to figure out, where that pinch point is, that somehow the IEC members are still perhaps being more restrictive. And so the extra layer that you're having to do, which I'm grateful that we are having you do it, you kick it back, they have to re-review it. It's still putting people through a lot of extra angst and work that's unnecessary. And so I'd like to see those numbers come down, where the re-reviews. I don't have a problem if people are not safe, if they've not been following the program, if they have done if they broke their sobriety. All of that makes abundant sense to me. But somewhere, if that isn't obvious, and yet you're still having to do these re-reviews and have them go back, somewhere I think, am I making sense?
You are. And yes, I just want to address one thing really, really quick, if that's okay. It's a re-education process. It truly is. And it's supporting this change process. I am seeing a decrease. When I'm reading the notes from the various committees and the discussions, you would go from when I first did my first reviews, everybody was like, nope, direct patient care, narcotic passing, we're moving forward. Now the reviews are, you read in the discussion, and you might have 4 members that are constituting the quorum, and you have 2 that say, well, I still think there's direct patient care needed. And there might be 2 that says, I'm not sure that that's needed. So there is a discussion now happening, and that to me is progress. And so that is occurring. And then I think that another thing to understand is, I've reviewed 20 of them. We have many participants in this program. And so I'm only getting a percentage of them. So there are many, many more that are coming in front of IEC, that the appropriate decisions are being made, that they're not asking for this to occur, and that's not going. And so hopefully that's understandable. I want to make sure that the picture is very clear that it's not IECs just continuing to do this absent of what the board asked. There was one thing I did want to point out, that clarification did have to occur in that there may have been a misunderstanding that the board's motion could have not aligned well with the law. And so that was clarification that had to be provided, that this board motion is not separate from the law, that it is an alignment of law and it's supported by the law, and that your board motion is in alignment with Uniform Standard number 12 and not in opposition of Uniform Standard number 12. And I think with that just continued support in education, we'll continue to see this get better. Tricia.
Well, thank you very much, Lori, and thank you, Vicky, for these great questions. I do think it is a re-education process, and I do think the numbers are going in the right direction. And I also think reviewing 20 cases out of 200 is a very manageable number of cases. I mean, I think we are heading in the right direction, but not without hiccups. And I agree, I like standardization, I like process, I like consistency, but I think these cases maybe are more nuanced than that. So I feel like we're in the growing pains. It's really uncomfortable right now, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
And I'll provide some more clarification on that data. It's not, it is 20 of 200, right? But it's not 20 of, it's not that low of a number when you're looking at how many people came in and petitioned for successful completion. So when you look at your data on page 6, you can see that there were 42 petitioned for successful completion. 30 of them were granted successful completion. There were 22 that went for review to me. 4 of them I accepted, 10 went to re-review. That number did change as I continued to review them. It's not it is 10% of the IP, but not 10, it wasn't all IP didn't go in front of the committees, just so that we have a clarification. So that number percentage wise is much higher than just like 10% of the program. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. Mm-hmm.
Did you get your question answered? Okay.
A couple more. I just wanted to also let you know that I am grateful for this review process. I've learned a lot, and it has created a pathway for the participants to reach out. And so I am getting emails from participants that are reaching out to say, can you re-review my case? I'm also getting emails from the vendor that is saying, these are here that may be up for review. And I'm getting that communication from my program manager as well. And so on that, I truly believe that we've created this feedback system that allows for that participation to happen and that communication to be there that probably wasn't there previously. And so additional to the request from our board to review those, I have reviewed a couple that were requested by the IEC, recommended by the IEC to terminate their program. So I did review 2 of those, and those went through the review process. I've had a couple more that have said, can you review my case? I'm not sure why I can't work as an RN right now. And we are reviewing those too. So I believe in answering a lot of the participants' issues where they kept saying to the board, we're not being heard, we don't have an avenue to be heard. I believe that has changed. And so we are getting reach outs. I've had a couple reach out about their sobriety date. We did change one of them on review. It was an error and we were able to correct that. And so that feedback and being able to have that communication is something that I had not experienced before in this program. And so I see that as a real positive. And then I know that we haven't addressed Allison or David on the WebEx. Is there any comments, questions from you guys?
I thank you for asking. I have the same issues that Vicky does, but like Tricia said, we're in growing pains, we're in re-education, and I would like to wait and see what happens. My only comment is, if an IEC recommends extending the length of the program for a candidate beyond 3 years, that's comparable to us extending a 3-year probation to 5 years, for example, and that seems rather dynamic. So I hope that's taken very, very seriously, but that's out of our hands. So no, I just want to wait and see. We'll see what happens in the next few months, how this plays out.
Thank you, David. And of course, we will be getting a report on this at each board meeting for the, for the foreseeable future. So I'd like to entertain any questions from board members here on the dais, and I'm going to, our board chair.
Yeah, I don't have so much of a question as, this arose out of the issues that participants were having and brought to us through public comment, where the board had asked Lori to now investigate this and tell us really what's going on. I don't see this as a permanent fix for Lori to keep doing this, but the information that she is gathering has been helpful for us and given us insight into what is going on with the program. So I truly appreciate the job she's doing in reporting back to us as the board.
Thank you, Chair Trujillo. Any other questions or comments from board members here before we go to public comment? This is information only, so we won't be making a motion ahead of time. Okay, seeing none, board moderator, would you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public. Type in, "I would like to make a comment." Nurse 117 would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Thank you, board members and BRN moderator, for your time. I apologize, I'm sick today. I've been in the intervention program for 16 months and have fully been compliant with the requirements. I'm very dedicated to my sobriety and work a strong sobriety recovery program. I've been out of work for the past 16 months, focusing on my family and my recovery as we welcomed our first child earlier this year. I love being a nurse and miss working in the field helping others. At my most recent intervention evaluation committee, I requested to return to work in a non-patient care setting. The meeting lasted 10 minutes, and the members did not inquire about my return to work essay or my relapse prevention plan. However, they did express that I was doing a good job and to keep up the good work. Weeks later, my Maximus case manager informed me that my request was denied and the committee would see me again in 6 months, which would be April of 2025. The IEC did not provide an explanation as to why they denied my request or provide any feedback to what they would like to see from me in the future. Even my case manager was surprised by their decision, considering my substantial progress in recovery. Like many others, I have a child, bills, and a mortgage, so not being approved to return to work and having to wait an additional 6 months imposes a significant financial strain on my family. It is extremely disheartening to consistently do everything asked of you and then be denied without a valid reason. Therefore, I believe this decision is unfounded and punitive. Sadly, I know that similar situations have happened to many other participants in the program. So now we are here before you all, advocating for ourselves and our careers and bringing to light the injustices in the intervention program, which is meant to help us, not hinder us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any in-person requests for comments there in HQ?
No, I don't think we do. Thank you very much, Board Moderator.
Thank you. May I close this window?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we will hear a report back. And Lori, maybe in the context of your reviews, you could review this issue that was brought up. That seems like a long time to be out of work. I don't know the participant's case and what's been going on, but that seems like a long time, and without a reason, that just seems unfair. So
Yes, definitely. So obviously it's confidential. She didn't give her name. I'm totally okay with that. If you can email me, my email is loretta.melby, and that's LORETTA.MELBY at dca.ca.gov. I will need to know the information so I can pull your file, and I will get that reviewed.
thank you very much. So we will conclude item 14.1 and move to item 14.2. Ms. Johnson, I see that you're coming up to the table. Thank you very much. Again, another information-only item, and this is about enforcement investigations and intervention, and we're getting an update.
And then real quick, I'm hearing some feedback, some speaking on the WebEx. Was there a board member discussion or a mic?
There was only an issue when that last person was speaking and I muted the room and it was fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Good morning, everybody. Shannon Johnson, I'm the board's enforcement division chief. I'll be presenting, can you not hear me?
Not very well.
Okay, maybe I need two microphones. There, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So I'll be presenting 14.2, but I also would like to introduce Nicole. I'll let her introduce herself.
Do I need two microphones or just one? Okay. Good morning. My name is Nicole Bowles. I am the Deputy Chief of Investigations here at the Board of Registered Nursing.
Thank you. Welcome.
So we'll both be presenting agenda item 14.2. Which is the information only, the enforcement, investigation, and intervention update. So general information, we are still in that pilot study with National Council, which you had a presenter, Richard Smiley, recently to present that. So we'll be reporting on those findings once we have those. We're still continuing with organizational improvement, the Office of OIO. They're still continuing to work with some of our units to map out all of our processes to see where we can streamline some of those. Also, on October 29th, the Office of Attorney General conducted a third of four-part training series. The fourth and final training is going to be held in November 2024. In attendance to those trainings are our BRN investigators, our complaint intake unit staff, Division of Investigation have all been present. And so they've been training on items such as med spa type situations or what's needed in an investigation and the process for all of that. We also continue to recruit qualified registered nurses and advanced practice nurses for our expert practice consultants. Some of the areas that are in need more so than others is our long-term care, skilled nursing, geriatric, acute, school nursing, med surg, pediatric, telemetry, dialysis. So those are, we need all areas, but those are some that are in more need than others. The information is on this agenda item summary as well as on our website. If you'd like to visit our website, it's under the enforcement tab under expert witness. You can find the application there and the criteria to become an expert witness. For complaint intake, the complaint intake is continuing to use the updated, and I don't know if you recall, recently back in, I believe, March 1st, it became effective. It is the complaint prioritization and referral guidelines. It used to be CPEI. It's now CPRG. And so we continue to use those as we update, and that became effective earlier this year. We continue to triage cases, obtain preliminary documentation to assist with investigations prior to sending it out to a field investigator, whether it be BRN or Division of Investigation. With discipline, as of November 5th, 13% of our cases are pending at the OAG, the Office of Attorney General, for over a year. So we have only 13% that are over a year there. We are also having OAH, I can't speak today, is beginning to hold in-person hearings. However, if all parties agree, they're going to go ahead and do remotely via online platform for some of those hearings. And we'll continue to monitor that to see if it has any impact on our cases at all. For probation, we're currently working on enhancements to both our website for BRN as well as maybe a tutorial video for any RNs who could possibly be facing probation. So what to expect, maybe some FAQs to assist them in that process. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Nicole for investigations.
Thank you, Shannon. So today I am here to highlight the investigators' caseload. So as of October 30th, 2024, the full-time special investigators have an average of 29 active cases. We want to bring this to the board's attention because due to the California State audit back in 2016, pursuant to recommendation number 7, our investigators' caseloads are capped at a maximum of 30 cases. So due to the investigators' caseloads being at their maximum limit, the 3 supervising special investigators and I are assigned and actively working an average caseload of 18 cases. And we also have 1 full-time investigations analyst who is actively performing supportive investigation activities. Since the implementation of the CPRGs, investigations experienced a 70% increase of the case referrals to 110 compared to the same time frame in the previous year of 65. I think it's important to note here that this data is only for the 8-month period from the time that the CPRGs were put into effect on March 1st, 2024 to October 30th of 2024. And that data was compared to last year's data in 2023. Investigations is exploring multiple options to address the high caseloads and has been actively recruiting for 1 full-time position in the central region and limited term investigators statewide. Thank you, Shannon. I'll pass it back to you.
Let me turn on my 2 microphones again. Okay. Moving on to any questions before we move on? Intervention's the last piece of this agenda.
Yeah, I just have one question. When you say cases are pending at the AG's office, does that mean they're waiting to be assigned or they've been assigned already, but
Well, when we're talking about cases over a year, it's usually cases that we've already pled. So you already have an accusation, a statement of issues, a petition to revoke probation posted. It's usually we're either waiting on a hearing or we're trying to work on a settlement option.
Great.
Most cases that are referred to the Attorney General's office is usually assigned within a few weeks of us
Thank you.
referring it over.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, Nicole, you mentioned something about a 70% increase to 110% increase? Oh, 70 to 100, no.
I'm sorry. So we've seen a 70% increase in the cases that we've received in investigations. So it went from 65 the previous year that we pulled this data to 110. You're welcome. Sorry.
So you had mentioned it had increased to 110. And does that tie in with the 29 cases per You had mentioned 29 cases per investigator.
That is our average right now, correct?
Seems higher than last year. Is it higher than last year?
I would have to go back and take a look at that data to confirm.
It just seems really high because you're close to that 30 threshold. And does that allow time for these cases to be adequately investigated?
It has increased slightly from last year to this year, maybe per investigator, because they are at the max. And we're looking at additional information. We can start to report a little bit more for you guys later at a later meeting, probably at the January EIC meeting. We can have some more data for you.
Okay, yeah, because that
Yeah.
seems kind of high. So, thank you.
Yeah, so one of the things, just for clarification for the board members, is in our audit that was referenced, it was back from 2016. And in that 2016, there was a focus on our board for not having timely investigations and not kind of following that process that they believe should have been followed. One of those recommendations is that we maintain, and at that point it said 20 per investigator. There was a whistleblower, another investigation, and in 2020 we reached out to DCA boards with similar processes and asked what their cap was. And it came back as a recommendation for us to turn into the California State Auditors that 30. And so we developed an entire plan with the investigations unit on what would happen as we approach the 30 caseload per investigator, whether the supervising investigators would take and start processing cases and help the investigators, et cetera, to try to keep it underneath that 30 caseload. What happens when we start approaching these 30 limit is new cases cannot be assigned, right? And so that's what we need to make sure that we're constantly vigilant of, is we're getting these cases investigated, that we're doing that appropriately, that those are moving through appropriately, but that also new cases coming in can be assigned, because you don't want to backlog there as well. And so I need you guys to definitely be aware that our supervising special investigators are taking a load. Some are taking a full 30 caseload in addition to their supervising duties. And Nicole, who is over them, is also taking a load and actively working cases right now, because there has been either a increase in cases, or there's been increase in times. There's something, and we're just now starting to open this up and really dive deep. And so that report out in January is going to provide us much more information for EIIC, and we'll hopefully be able to have some plan to move forward. But we wanted the board to make sure that they were fully aware of what was going on.
So Nicole, is it the norm for you to take cases as a supervisor over these investigators, or?
So I will comment that the supervising special investigators, it is written into their duty statement that they would take approximately 5% of those cases that are complex and unusual. And I can only speak to wanting to jump into the trenches with my staff and assist with these cases because we have such a high caseload. I have the skills to do it. I'm prepared to do it, so I am.
Okay, but as Lori mentioned, though, we're really getting close to that threshold of 30.
Yes, ma'am.
And you are still working and taking cases above really what you're supposed to be taking, or what is ideally the amount you should be taking in order to adequately supervise the other investigators. Yeah.
Vicki?
Go ahead, Ms. Granowitz. Why don't you go first?
No. No.
Okay. Is part of the problem the lag time with what our responsibilities are with reviewing cases or having closed session?
You want me to speak to that? No, I don't believe so. This is the investigation piece. So
Okay.
it's post-complaint intake, pre-disciplinary process. Unless we need a supplemental piece of that investigation, we may go back, but that's the second piece of a complaint coming in.
Okay.
We investigate whether it goes to DFI or BRN. We also had an increase, which you'll see in some of the stats in Table A on this agenda item summary. We did increase, we're looking at the reasons behind the increase and want to get that data. And that's why I said we could report more later once we kind of dig into some of this data and, try to identify why we're having the increase and where it's coming from. So,
Okay, as long as it's not something that we could help ameliorate.
I don't think so. By that time that you have the case, it has already been, the intake has happened, the field investigations occurred, the expert consultant has reviewed it, and the Attorney General has prosecuted it.
Because what I want to say is that it seems like cases are moving through the process much more quickly than they used to, because we're getting ones that, I mean, are amazingly quick. So
Even our 801 settlements, we used to get comments from the board all the time that why am I seeing this 4 years after? Because the insurance settlements we wouldn't get until they've completely investigated and taken action on their side, and then we would get the report. Plus, we also changed the law that we moved the number of reportable from 3,000 to 10,000. So you guys are getting those. Those were probably some of the oldest cases you were reviewing, but that has now been resolved as well.
Well, I just wanted to say good job, because on our end, it looks like they're moving through much quicker.
Yes. And I just want to say that's thanks to our enforcement staff. They're amazing. Yes.
Congratulations, because that seems a lot better.
Thank you.
And then I just want to clarify, enforcement staff encompasses much more than that. We have the decision and appeals. We also have investigations and such. So enforcement on our org chart looks different than some other org charts, because we did have to pull areas out, but it does encompass all of them. So I just want to make sure the staff that's listening that it's thanks to them as well. One of the things to highlight, though, as well is where Nicole was talking about a change in process. So previously we had what was called a Division of Investigations pilot, and that pilot is not active any longer. And that was kind of the change that we're working with and working through, where cases that potentially would have investigated by Division of Investigations are now being kept by BRN. And so that could also be a contributing factor to the increase in numbers in our investigations.
Any other
Great.
questions?
I don't see.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on.
Thank
So
you.
intervention. So as Lori mentioned earlier.
Just a moment.
Mhm.
Allison, Board Member Allison
Oh, I'm
Cormack, do
sorry.
you have a question?
Thank
I saw
you.
your hand.
Nope, I'm all
All right.
set. Just
right.
waving my Kleenex probably.
Thank you.
That's okay. So with intervention, as Lori mentioned earlier, we're still attending the IEC meetings to identify some possible gaps, ensure that we're capturing rationale behind recommendations from the IECs. At the February 28-29 board meeting, so you allowed us to begin work on a regulation package, which we will begin working on that, and some of the motions and things that you guys have discussed recently, we'll be bringing forward to the EIIC and then to board once we get some regulation recommendations for you. Although the contract with Maximus expires at the end of this year, we continue to work with them, discuss development or develop best practices, identify areas that we can improve, and just ensure that we're adhering to all the laws and regulations that are in place. We're continuing to recruit IEC members, which is one of the upcoming agenda items. with knowledge and experience in substance use disorder treatment, recovery, and mental health, as Lori mentioned earlier. And I just want to say that and I'm glad we have the subcommittee so you guys can interview and review these closely. But our IEC members, so we have 9 IECs, amongst them are 45 IEC members. It is 3 RNs, 1 physician, 1 public member. Just to clear that up for everybody, they are and sitting in these meetings, their discussion, I appreciate it. They're very highly educated, experienced in substance use disorder and mental health. So I want to say that, and I look forward to appointing more members. With that, that is the end of 14.2. There's also Table A, which is all of our data stats for all of the units: complaint intake, intervention, citations, discipline, legal support, investigations, probation, and the list goes on. So are there any questions at all on the remainder?
Thank
of
you
that
very
agenda?
much, Shannon, for really a great, complete presentation. And thanks for the comments on the investigations. Any questions from board members? And maybe we'll start with our outside board members. How about Board Member Lawler or Board Member Cormack? Yeah, go ahead, Board Member Lawler.
Just, and forgive me for not remembering, I'm sure it's been brought up before. Believe it or not, I do actually have absolute respect for the expertise and experience and education of these IEC members. Shannon, my question is, in spite of that, can you remind me, are they trained or given orientation or education about the intervention process and the role they're playing in it, or are we just relying upon their expertise in order to make their decisions? And I suppose there's no way to do this in a black and white way, but if I had a rubric that said, when you make this decision, here's the consequence to the person that you just made that decision on. And I'm saying that from the perspective of a teacher who is having top-down decisions being made on my students, as if my students were not human, but were cell phones being assembled on a factory assembly line.
Yeah, and they are trained. If you recall, or maybe not, we did a training a year or so ago with all of them. We went through all of the aspects. We tried to go over uniform standards, all of our statutes, our regulations, and then as we bring IEC members in, they have an orientation. With the new vendor coming on, we anticipate we were going to have some trainings at the end of this year, but with all of the changes occurring, we decided to wait until after the beginning of the year. We're going to need to do training with the new vendor, their portal and database that we're going to need to use. So the IEC members will also need to be trained on that, as well as our board staff. And then we want to do some additional training with them on statute and all of that. At every IEC meeting, we ask for recommendations on regulations. We're continually sharing with them when they go to make a recommendation. We share with them what the statute states or what the regulation states or what the uniform standard states, so they can have a discussion on where they feel this participant fits within the realm of that. So we are continually trying to educate them at every meeting and give them the opportunity as one of the agenda items in the open session of the meetings to address any possible recommendations to regulation, any possible recommendations to training, any possible recommendations to the guidelines that we provide them when they start and on an ongoing basis.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. How about Board Member Cormack? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Wynn. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I think we've talked before about the tables and the fact that it's a little bit hard to understand changes over time. I'm looking on page 14 and I'm looking at total case processing time. So despite all the work that's being done, I'm pretty sure that number has gone up from the last time we looked at it. And I see that we have 64% over 540 days. So am I right that the average days to complete has gone up?
Unfortunately, you are correct. That number does fluctuate. Our number, even though it's higher than the 540, what is our goal? And I know there's been a lot of conversation if that number is even achievable. We've talked about that. We try our hardest to meet that 540 days, but we have a couple areas that unfortunately is out of our control, which would be, possibly investigation time because we do have to wait for documents to be received. If we have a facility that's not being compliant with that, we have to then pursue those documents and records by subpoena. We also have the adjudication process of filing that, and then they have due process. If they choose to go to hearing, that also includes time on that end of it. So we have to wait for the hearing to take place. And then, of course, the process after that, when we receive the proposed decision of it going to board for vote and then coming back and getting processed, or if it gets held for discussion. So all of that plays a part in a case. But there are those two very large sections, which is investigation and the prosecution, that are usually around a 300-day average for each of those.
Yes, I wonder if we could add to this, instead of an average, which will mask things at the edges, maybe a median number, because I'm willing to bet the median number is a lot lower and the average is being skewed by some of these longer cases. I could be wrong, but just from a mathematical standpoint, I don't know that this number is as helpful. I know we have to remove it.
Yeah,
I can't hear you.
Oh, I was just going to say, before we didn't even, separate them out to show you how many we really had under 540 days. It was just that number alone. And so we thought, well, that still doesn't give us credit for all the cases that we do have under 540 days. So I'd be more than happy to look at the median as well and add that in.
If it's helpful, I mean, I'm guessing it might be helpful.
Be.
The other thing is the pie charts. I understand why they're there, but I wonder if we could have bar charts that show us sort of over time, because that's the missing component with this. Is it's a snapshot and it's hard for us to see trends. So I realize that's some work, and I'm not 100% sure what the right things to do, but maybe adding a few of them just so we can see the trends and hopefully be helpful to you.
And again, I apologize because I believe I had let you know that normally after the end of a fiscal year, at the first board meeting after a fiscal year is ended, I normally do a fiscal year comparison so you could at least see the last 4 or 5 fiscal years compared. And we did have a lot of changes with COVID and everything the last 4 years. So it's going to be very helpful. And I do anticipate at our EIIC in January to have that comparison for you. And maybe we'll throw in some bar charts to make it maybe a little easier read. Because I know some like the bar charts, some like just the numbers. So we can do both if you'd like.
That sounds great, Ms. Johnson. And I think at the EIIC meeting makes a ton of sense. And going back over since before COVID, hopefully we'll be able to, see all the positive things that have occurred and just identify other things we should be prepared for. Thanks again.
Yes, you're welcome.
Great, thanks very much for that question. I'm going to acknowledge Chair Trujillo has a question.
Just a quick question. Thank you. So we talked about earlier that there's been an increase in cases also. Would that increase in cases affect this number that we're talking about here, as far as the cases over 540 days versus under 540 days?
Possibly. The 540 days is only closed cases. So if we have pending cases that are accumulating time, it wouldn't be represented in this overall number because those are all only closed cases and how long it took us to complete them.
Except it would be in a future data point.
Sure. Oh, yes, down the road. And that's why I like to do the fiscal year comparisons.
Yeah. That's what I'm wondering.
So if it takes longer to get assigned to an investigator because their caseload's full, or if it takes longer to make it through an investigator, then when that case closes, then those numbers are reported out in that 540 and you will see an elevation.
Yes.
So if it ever comes to a point where these cases, these caseloads become, let's just say at 30, right? That's the threshold. Do we look at, what do we look at to reduce those cases? Do we look at hiring more staff, or?
I think first we need
What
to
is-
understand the numbers. So I think, you know, given the opportunity to get into this, the statistical information to figure out, because I think it's a mix of different things. I don't want to say it's all attributed to one item. It may be a mix of things. We did have 1 month, a couple months ago, where normally we average about 700 complaints coming into our intake unit. We were at 1450. It was attributed to, though, we had a social media posting that invited a lot of people to file a complaint. So we ended up getting multiple complaints, hundreds of complaints, actually. But we
of
don't know if the
complaints.
whole jump of that number over our average is really attributed 100% to that. There may be other factors. And again, our numbers are ebb and flow every month. 1 month we might get in 800 complaints. The next month, we might only get 600. And so that drives everything going down the road. It will drive what gets referred out to BRN investigations, to DFI. It impacts discipline on that end once it's, investigated, how many complaints are getting referred over for the prosecution process of it. So that whole number coming in really drives everything after.
Yeah, that was something that we had not experienced before, where there was a social media outreach where they invited many people to complain about a single person. And so we received thousands of complaints. We would come into work on Monday and have 400 or 500 complaints received over the weekend on a single person. And so if you look at how everything is put together, that is complaint intake that has to take those. And you have to look at every single one. You cannot say, oh, this is duplicative. You actually have to look at every single one, process every single one, and work through that to ensure that there was not additional data that one person submitted that another person did not, that would lead towards more investigation or something. And so when you have an entire unit working through one single complaint that was received by thousands, then the other complaints coming in are slower to come through. And so then once that was done, then you catch up on the ones that were there. And then it becomes kind of like a package being passed versus just one or two trickling in, right? So then you get this package that's passed to the next one, which is investigations. And so that could have increased a kind of a unforeseen kind of bubble of just increased caseload that went
Well,
through, which
it
is
definitely-
why we definitely have to open this up and look at it.
It definitely increased our case time coming out of complaint intake, because if you can imagine, having to process those complaints and move them on, the ones that needed to get moved on to field investigations may have got delayed slightly. So we're in the process of really trying to look at that right now. And I want to be able to report on whether or not, that was 100% of the impact, the social media posting, or were there other factors during that time? And again, it's ebb and flow. So sometimes there is a 200 difference, and it's just how cases came in.
Just another point of clarification. You mentioned that a lot of the reasons, or many of the reasons why things can get delayed past the 540 days can be due to the adjudication process, hearings, the applicant process, not getting documents in and things like that. With all the data you're capturing, which is very much appreciated, are you also capturing that? Because that seems like a checkbox situation that we can look at.
As
and
far
just-
as those other two buckets
Right.
of the larger portions, absolutely.
great. I just wanna make sure.
We look at so many data points, and we look at every milestone of a case. And in fact, and I just want to say, years ago, prior to or around the time of our audit back in 2016, 2015, we were probably at 12 to 1400 days for a case. So we have really reduced over having that audit. That audit really showed us some things are where we needed to improve. And as a board and the staff were really on board with all of those changes. And, you know, to be where we are today, I'm really proud that we have these numbers, even though they still look large. And when you look at one unit, we may be able to shave off 5 days, but if we could do that with every part of the process, it really accumulates at the end of, so that's what we continually look at. You're welcome.
Our Assistant Executive Officer, Yvonne Leonard, would like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you. Dolores, I also wanted just to provide some information to you in regards to,
Closer to the mic.
sorry, provide some additional information to the the request that you had. Was there additional resources? Is that hiring? So we are looking at how we can get additional resources to help, and that includes, as Nicole had mentioned, the SSIs are actively working cases. Nicole is actively working cases. We've started a pilot of seeing if getting additional preliminary information to the SIs by someone other than the SIs, if it helps their case. If we deem that is beneficial, then I will start collecting the preliminary information to help. So when the SI receives a package, it has more information. We are also working very closely with Shannon's team. They do an enhanced triage and data collection. We have started weekly meetings to try to see if we can refine that process. I'm looking at additional resources within the BRN. Is there anyone that has, even if it's just 20% of their time, that we can redirect on a temporary or permanent basis to assist with some of the non-SI specific activities? We're looking at uploading. We have to upload and save files, and that's administrative time, but it takes time. So we're making some changes to that. So we're looking at every aspect of the investigation process, including like the complaint intake, because as Shannon mentioned, if they can shave off 5 days, can investigations, can we shave off 5 days? That all adds up. We're also looking at different tools, and very exciting to have OIO doing the process mapping, which is being done in enforcement and in investigations. And so once that process is complete, we will look at it and see, is there any redundancies that we just hadn't identified? Is there any efficiencies? When they do the process mapping, it includes how we're doing it and what we could be doing based on their data collection efforts. So we're waiting for that to happen. Nicole is actively working with Department of Consumer Affairs to see if there's any IT solutions. We have to track all of our time. So we're looking to see, can we use Breeze as a time tracking, which we believe could reduce the SI time. And I know it sounds silly, but that could take off maybe 1 hour a week of their work, but that's still an hour that we've got. And with all the other efforts, there is no one single effort that's going to address this. The complaints continue to come in. And that's fine. That's the purpose, is to receive the complaints and to investigate them. With the current fiscal crisis of the state, securing full-time permanent state employment may take longer than it would have in a different climate. And so we're looking at that, and then we're looking at all other options that we have. So I can assure you every option is being considered to, again, redirection. Can we have workload being done by other than SIs that the SIs do not need to complete? We're in a pilot right now, seeing if somebody other than the SI starts the report. There's basic information in all the reports. Does that help them enough to make it beneficial? So we're looking at every aspect.
Thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate all the work and information that you've just now given me. Just for, what is SI?
Special
Supervised
investigator.
Okay, thank you. I
And then the
figured the I
SSI
was
is
for
the
investigator.
supervising special investigator.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
And then
thank you very much, Yvonne. That was super helpful. And the thing that I like the best about it is the collaboration And, you know, it's so easy to just all get into our silos, and I just really feel like this is just a group effort, and I appreciate it. So thank you both.
A couple of the things to highlight that Yvonne shared out is one of the comments was, can they receive some documents ahead of time? Can they do some kind of preliminary work? One of the other things to tag team on that is one of the issues that Nicole brought up in her report is sometimes there is a delay in getting records from facilities. And we do have a subpoena authority that is delegated to us from the Department of Consumer Affairs. And we do have issues sometimes enforcing those subpoenas and getting that information back. And so that also plays into that 540 day. That also plays into lengthening time with investigators. And so we do have legal that's actually working with us on that subpoena authority, working with facilities to get kind of better pathways to get that worked out. Because as you know, Yvonne shared, it's not a one size fits all. We don't have a singular answer here. There is many things that we have to do to approach this. One other thing, just for people that are not part of the public, because I was not a public employee for many, many years. And I was a private sector employee and a private sector manager. And at that point, if I needed staff, I could just hire staff. If I needed a position, I can just get a position. I had the budget, I can do it. BRN has the budget. We don't have position authority. We don't have the ability to do that. And so that was one of the things that Yvonne brought up here is talking about in a budget crisis year with the governor's office and with our state, and looking at when she said in a different climate, that really was nice of her to say that in a very politically correct manner. But every time we need a new position, we have to petition to get it. I can't just say, hey, Yvonne, go, we need to have a new position, go get it. We actually have to write a report. It's called a budget change proposal. And that has to be reviewed and accepted. And it goes through the Department of Finance. It goes all the way up to be approved and back down. And a few years back, we did ask for a budget change proposal for investigators, and we were not able to move forward with that. Our vacancy rate was too high at that moment in other areas because we had just undergone an organization chart change. There was a unit that was developed that was not able to be implemented as it was originally developed. So with some changes, that unit is now being developed in a much different way than we ever expected it to be done. And we just received a position, not a sweep, but there are positions that we will not be able to go forward and maintain past July of next year. And so of the, we had a report here a few months back where we were saying that we had 244 employees at the BRN. Some of those are, we have what's called position authority. Others we have as limited term or staff that are in the blanket is what they're called. And those are not permanent positions, but we have the budget to support that. We have looked for limited term positions for special investigators. We've looked at retired annuitants to come in for special investigators. We've looked at hiring into the blanket. There is not a large qualified applicant pool out there as well. And so even with looking at those avenues and ongoing interviews happening in South and Central and North areas, we're not able to get candidates that we can move forward to with. And so we're working on the hiring aspect too, but that does make it difficult when you don't have permanent positions, because when people want to work, they want a job that they can depend on, and that's a permanent position. If we don't have position authority, it is not a permanent position. We can get temporary help in. And so that makes that position difficult to recruit for. And so that is something I've had to adjust to, because it seems on face value when you come from an outside perspective, you're like, just hire more people. That makes sense. You guys have the budget. I pay for my nursing license. It shows here we did your budget yesterday. You have ample amounts of funds. Why aren't you just hiring more people? That is not a process that is the same as private sector to public sector. So I really wanted to make sure that that was clear as well. That in order for us to get new positions, that's a huge process, and we can put forth all the support that we want for it, and we could still be denied. Yvonne.
And I'd like to add just one other thing, and I'm sorry that I omitted this. The other thing that we have done is we've went to our subject matter experts. We've went to our special investigators and asked them what would help you. We now meet as a management team to review those recommendations, to prioritize them, to see which ones we can implement short-term, long-term, where are the challenges. And so that has been very enlightening to me. There's, with the number of special investigators we have, there is differences of opinion, but we're working with them to hear their feedback, what would help them. And so that's been very helpful to us.
Thank you all very much. This was really a great presentation with a lot of information. We're going to go to public comment.
Real
Oh,
quick.
You have one more?
Yep,
Yeah.
real quick before public comment, I did want to make sure just to kind of close the loop on the intervention part.
Yes.
It was mentioned in Shannon's report that Maximus, our current vendor, who's longtime partners with us, is not renewing. This is the last board meeting that we'll have to acknowledge them and thank them for just providing an amazing service to us over, I think, 40 years. Is that some 20? Sorry, I doubled that in my mind. It felt like forever, probably to them too. So 20 years of them collaborating with the BRN and DCA and our Healing Art boards to really provide these intervention alternative to discipline programs, as well as working with probation as well. And so we just really want to thank you guys. On a continuation of that is we are lined up to hopefully have a vendor that will start up prior to the end of the fiscal year, the end of the year, calendar year, sorry. We are in contract negotiations with DCA, and we do fully expect that to be executed and implemented and them onboarding prior to the completion of Maximus. Maximus does have a very robust kind of transition plan. And so I want to make sure that the participants as well as our board staff understand that there should not be a gap in care, that we should maintain services throughout to the end of the year. Vault, which is the testing provider, agreed to stay on and provide testing through the end of January, and that participants can still call in and check in and get their random drug testing completed. Maximus will be providing all of the data to the board, to Department of Consumer Affairs on the 31st of December. And that information will be transferred with our IT, DCA's IT, to the new vendor. And the new vendor, if we can get them on and in prior to the end of the year, will work with DCA, work with the individual boards and bureaus, and also work with Maximus to transfer that data to make sure that it's usable and then carried over into their system as well. So a lot of moving parts in the last month of the year to get this wrapped up.
Can I also
Yes.
say too, and this is for if there's any participants listening in right now, because it has been a question, there will not be a lapse in our IEC meetings.
No.
They will still continue. They're going to be seen. We still have them scheduled out and proposed for the following, for 2025. So just in case anyone's worried about that, we will continue with those as usual.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Shannon. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Granowitz.
I do want to acknowledge that, yes, there were issues with Maximus for the last 8 months, but even our callers who were unhappy talked about how great the program was prior to whatever happened 8 months ago that we're trying to correct. So there was a lot of years where people really had wonderful experiences at Maximus. It doesn't mean that there weren't issues. But we did hear that feedback in our public comment.
And then just for clarification, the last 8 months have not been kind of a complaint of Maximus. Maximus is one part of the puzzle piece, as well as us as the board, us as board staff, as well as our intervention evaluation committee and the participants, and just getting that communication, getting that education out there, and just really seeing how we can do this better together. So I wanted to make sure that, just to clarify, that last 8 months, it's, we're all kind of holding various levels that we are responsible for, that we need to update and improve on, and that it doesn't live with Maximus. Throughout that entire time, we have continue to hear really positive feedback about Maximus as well, even during this process, just depending on what is being discussed. I've had an amazing working relationship with them, and I wish them the best as they continue on in their new kind of focus. I know that they do offer this service for the state of Montana, so they are still providing this service out there. And hearing from Montana's EO, they're doing an amazing job. So one thing that I did want to wrap this up with is that there will be notifications going out on Maximus's communication to the intervention participants several different times throughout December. And they will have some clear direction given with those notices. And just to follow up with Shannon and just put an emphasis on that, is there will be no break in coverage, and they will have continued coverage and not delay any processes.
Good. Thanks very much. And thanks to Maximus for your great service over the years. So, board moderator, would you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." George Olson IV would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Olson, and I'm currently enrolled in the probation program. I'm here today to request that the issue of international travel for probation nurses be added to the agenda item for discussion at a future meeting. It has been clarified that probation nurses are not permitted to travel internationally, yet diversion nurses are allowed with flexibility. This inconsistency raises serious concerns about fairness and equity in the treatment of nurses across the different programs. The impact of this policy is deeply personal, and at times it's heartbreaking. There was a gentleman in the probation program who spoke in public comment on October 17th at the EIIC meeting and expressed that he was unable to attend his own mother-in-law's funeral in Thailand. And how is this right to deny someone the opportunity to grieve and support their family during such a profound loss, especially when there's options to work around this? For me, this policy means I cannot visit my family in Argentina, and my 9-month-old son has yet to meet his extended family there. And every passing month feels like a missed opportunity to create cherished memories and strengthen family bonds. So prohibiting international travel not only affects nurses, but also their loved ones, compounding the emotional toll of this restriction. I strongly urge the board to consider this issue as an agenda item in the future. Policy should be compassionate, equitable, and aligned with realities of nurses in their personal and professional lives. Allowing international travel, particularly for significant life events or family emergencies, would reflect a humane approach to supporting nurses as they work through the probationary period. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to the possibility of this issue being addressed in a future agenda item in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. ER would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. *6 on your phone. Okay, ER. There you go.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering if, are there any opportunities for nurses to work for the Board of Registered Nurses as a part-time or per diem employee?
Thank you. So to answer that question, I think I have to provide additional clarification first. Is the Board of Registered Nursing only has a handful of RNs that work for them. And they work in the role one as the EO, which I am, and that is not a part-time or per diem, I promise, although I'd love it to be. No, and the other roles are called nursing education consultants. And those at this point are all full-time positions and permanent positions. And there is only, a handful. So one of the things for the public to understand that the Board of Registered Nursing serves nurses, but are not made up of nurses. And so our staff is varied in nature. We have people that have masters in business administration. We have people that have judicial degrees. We have people that do multiple things. If you're looking at like experts, go for it, Shannon. I'll let her
Yeah.
further on that.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I only have one microphone on, so I'm just making sure. We do have expert practice consultants that we hire, RNs, advanced practice RN. We also have our IEC members. So there are 3 registered nurses per IEC. We have 9 IECs across the state currently. There are always positions coming open. If you wanted to apply for an expert practice consultant, or if you wanted to apply to become one of our IEC RNs, you can find all of that information on our website at RN, I'm getting my websites mixed up, .ca.gov. So if you go to that website to the enforcement tab, you can find the links to those applications and also the criteria for each of those positions to see if you qualify.
Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any in-person requests for comments there in HQ?
There do not appear to be any public commenters here.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you very much to Shannon, Nicole, and Yvonne for chiming in. This was very helpful. I'm wondering if there are any questions or comments from board members. Go ahead, Chair Trujillo.
I don't have a question or comment. Are there any comments? Okay,
Wait, can we just, Board Member Lawler, Board Member Cormack, any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Go ahead.
Before we move on in the meeting, I would like to take a 10-minute break
Good.
at this time.
We'll come back to our last item, which is agenda item 14.3, which again is information only.
Okay, and let's come back at 11:05.
The hour of 11:10 having arrived, we'll go ahead and reestablish our quorum. Chair Nguyen is here. President Trujillo. Vice President Granowitz.
Granowitz present.
Board Member Lawler. I see you. Board Member Cormack.
Cormack here.
Great, we have a quorum. EO Melby
I am here as well.
and Council Harry Skoletsky.
Present.
Present, great. Okay, so we're ready to get started with item number 14.3. Again, this is information only, and this is an overview of the recruitment and selection process of the Intervention Evaluation Committee, IEC members, and nurse support group facilitators. And Shannon Johnson will be here to present again.
Thank you. Shannon Johnson, I'm the board's enforcement division chief. I'll be presenting 4.3 as well as 4.4. So this agenda item is just an overview of the recruitment selection for both IEC members, that's the Intervention Evaluation Committee members, and the nurse support group facilitators. As I mentioned earlier, the Intervention Evaluation Committee is comprised of 5 individuals, 3 registered nurses, 1 physician, and 1 public member. Recruitment for an IEC member is done by the board per Business and Profession Code 2770.2C. A majority vote of the board is required for an appointment to an IEC. An overview of the IEC and their role in the intervention program is available on the board's website. A candidate for an IEC member must submit an application and a curriculum vitae or resume. Again, that application is available on our website, along with information on the criteria needed to become a member. The current process is the application is reviewed by board staff. If they meet the minimum qualifications, and there is a vacancy, they will be presented to the board for review and appointment. And also reappointment if they're going into possibly their second 4-year term. For nurse support groups, which is another component of the intervention program, outlined in Business and Professions Code 315 is the uniform standards, and that is where you will find the criteria for a nurse support group facilitator. The meeting facilitator, they must have a minimum of 3 years experience in the treatment and rehabilitation of substance abuse, and shall be licensed or certified by the state or other nationally certified organizations. The meeting facilitator must not have a financial relationship, personal or business relationship with a licensee within the last year. The group meeting facilitator shall provide to the board a signed document showing the licensee's name, the group name, the date and location of the meeting, the licensee's attendance, and the licensee's level of participation and progress. The facilitator shall report any unexcused absence within 24 hours. And just so I said, it's another component of intervention, but the nurse support groups are also utilized by probation. It's the very same nurse support groups. And so we do have a mix of both intervention participants and probation participants in the same groups. Additionally, Uniform Standard 13B, group meeting facilitators delineates the qualifications and requirements which are applied to the intervention program nurse support group facilitators and probation for the Board of Registered Nursing. So it states that they must have a minimum of 3 years, and it kind of reiterates. So I'm not going to read 1 through 5 again, but they have to have the experience, qualifications. They have to have let me see here. They have to have 3 years experience in treatment and rehabilitation. They have to be licensed. They have to report all the unexcused absences within 24 hours, whether it be probation or intervention. And they have to provide to the board a signed document showing, again, their name, group number, the date. So for attendance purposes, we get that for both intervention and probation. Additional information, again, is available on our website, including the current list of nurse support group facilitator meetings, and with contact information. Again, the nurse support group facilitator application is available online if anyone's interested in becoming a facilitator. The current contract, which is just kind of repetitive from the previous discussions, but the current contract, so with our vendor, requires the vendor to participate in the process or in the process for nurse support group facilitators as directed by the board. Additionally, Maximus is to monitor the number of participants assigned to a nurse support group and adjust as appropriate. They need to perform annual unannounced visits to the nurse support group meetings and recruit and manage the nurse support group facilitators. So that's just kind of a high overview of those to the IEC members and the nurse support group facilitators. And again, it's not just intervention with the nurse support group, but it's also probation. Are there any questions on this is one of the presentations we were going to do a couple meetings ago, but it got delayed until today. So
Thank you very much, Shannon. Are there any questions from board members here on the dais? Seeing none, how about our remote board members? Cormac, yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Ms. Johnson, I just checked what's on the website, and one of the questions we get or comments is about the cost. Is it possible to add the cost of the nursing support group, the weekly cost, to the page here? I can imagine if someone was choosing that would be.
we track it, but we do not dictate cost. That is up to the nurse support group facilitator to determine the cost. It's normally, we have facilitators that charge nothing. They just want to volunteer their time for this cause. Some of them charge $80 per participant per month. So that's a range. We have recently started asking for some data from these facilitators so we can gain more information. We do also limit the number of participants per meeting, but they set their own fees.
And do we say that? I don't see that on the list. We don't say that.
I don't believe we on the website.
Might be a helpful piece of information when participants are choosing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And for the most part, the participants are assigned to an IEC based on location. And it used to be more so pertinent because of the fact that they were all in-person meetings. So we wanted to make sure that they were within, a geographical location that was, appropriate for where they reside. And now all of the meetings are online, so that's not necessarily a hindrance anymore, but they are assigned. They don't choose their IEC.
I see that.
Excuse me, nurse support group.
I see the board member Patel has a question.
Thank you, Shannon, for the presentation. I just have a question if we have a process in place for monitoring or evaluating committee members on an annual basis, maybe quarterly basis. I don't know how frequent is necessary, but do we have a process in place to ensure that our committee members are doing what they need to be doing?
We do have it was a kind of an informal review sheet that we would fill out after every meeting pertaining to each of the committee members. We're in the process of relooking at that because I think there's some information that wasn't included on there, some that's maybe not as pertinent. So we're looking at revamping that and how and I also want to start looking at a possible way to get surveys back from the committee members as to how they feel the meetings are and what they need from us that maybe they're not getting.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments from board members? Okay, board moderator, this is information only. We're not going to be taking a motion. Board moderator, would you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Chris Else would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Just wondering, I'm Chris Else, I'm one of the nurse support group facilitators. I'm just wondering in this transition, like the other day I had to call in, tried to get a hold of someone at the board that asked a question to about an issue that came up in our nurse support group. I called a few numbers. I guess I don't have anything current. So if we could be provided with some current information. So if we have to report someone within 24 hours, I do need to be able to directly get a hold of either someone from the new provider that's taking over for Maximus or someone in the probation department, because sometimes a probation monitor is on leave. and I can't get a hold of them directly. I have no one else. I've left message with the general enforcement number, but I don't seem to get a call back. And the numbers I had for Shannon and Jaspreet, I don't think are current. So if we have any kind of, we've had, I think, an information back in April. If we could continue to do that, another information or meeting with the board with us facilitators would be greatly appreciated. So we can stay, especially during this transition, that we can stay in touch and make sure no nurse is overlooked or something happens. So we'd much appreciate that. Thank you.
Caesar, or am I unmuted? Okay. Chris, just to give you some follow-up information on that, the email addresses that you have provided and been communicating on, those are still active. So please continue to communicate in that manner as well. That way we have some written documentation. Additionally to that, the phone numbers for our board staff have not changed. They remain the same that they've been for years. And so if you're having issues, please send me an email and let me know which ones, and we'll have our phone services looked at. Additionally, Maximus will be providing transition information as well as how to maintain contact. Maximus stays current until January 31st and will continue to provide all services open at least through the 20th of December. After that, they do plan on kind of slowly dropping off some of their services. So that pathway remains open, and we fully intend to have the vendor in place prior to that. So there should not be a delay or any kind of a process where you would not be able to communicate. So please continue to reach out. And if you're not able to get anything through on phone, please use the email addresses that you have access to as well.
Julie would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Julie, *6 on your phone. Julie, are you not able to unmute? Committee Chair Nguyen, some assistance, please. What would you like me to do?
Is there a way for Julie to type in her comment?
We'll see here. She just put in, I have a comment.
If she was able to type in that she has a comment, she should be able to type in that what she may want us to read for her, if at all possible. She said, I guess next time. Thanks. Julie, if you're able to type into that comment, please use that. If you're not able to unmute, you should be able to do star six to unmute. You have been elevated to be able to do that. If you're not able to do that, please type it into the comment section and we will read your comment. Board moderator, if you want to move on to the next person that has a public comment and allow us to give Julie a chance to type it in, or we can check back with her to bring her off mute next time. Oh, hang on. She did say, my question is, in the website, there is a star next to the be a registered nurse. What does this mean? And I'm going to pull that up really quick so I can give her an answer. I'm looking to see where that is. I will continue to work with that, Julie, and let you know. There does say the nurse support group facility qualifications. Yes, thank you. So Shannon, it means that they don't have to be an RN, correct? To be a nurse support group facilitator, or do they have to be an RN?
Not necessarily. It is kind of general on that qualification or criteria within
Yes.
uniform standards. They can be licensed with another certification or license type by a state or by some other means that would make them eligible as far as the substance abuse, mental health aspect.
Okay. Julia, hopefully that was able to answer your question, is it's not that you do not have to be a licensed RN to be that facilitator. There are some other pathways.
Kevin would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Had a follow-up question regarding this 14.2. If I recall correctly, at the last subcommittee meeting, it was pointed out that Maximus actually was recruiting and bringing forth the IEC members to the board for approval. And one of the one of the board members brought up that they were having a committee to address that. And just wondering how that was going and how I know it states on the paper that they're actually recruited by the board, but that isn't what was actually stated at the subcommittee meeting. And yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Support group, or sorry, Kevin, don't drop off because I might have some clarifying questions. Are you talking about the nursing support group or the IEC?
No, I'm specifically speaking to the last public subcommittee or board meeting that on that meeting, it was stated that typically Maximus has been recruiting or bringing forward names to presenting to the board for approval of the IEC committee meetings. And one of the board members specifically said that, is there a process in place for us to vet them and interview them independently? And I thought that was what was going to be addressed in this 14.3, and I just didn't hear anything regarding that.
Yes, thank you. So actually that was addressed earlier on in our agenda today, and that was addressed, yesterday. And that was addressed in the agenda. You will see agenda item 6.2. And agenda item 6.2 in yesterday's beginning of this board meeting, it said, discussion and possible action regarding the establishment of a board subcommittee to review intervention evaluation committee IEC applications and participate in the interview process of potential IEC members prior to the presentation to the board for consideration of appointment. And so yesterday, our board member opened this agenda item. We had discussion. The board did make a vote to establish this subcommittee and appointed 2 of our board members to this subcommittee. And the 2 board members that were appointed were the chair of this EIIC, Tricia Nguyen, as well as our vice president, Neelu Patel. And so those will be the 2 board members that will be participating in the review of the intervention evaluation committee member applicants prior to their appointment. Is that the process that you are seeking clarification on? Did we answer that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and I want the board to know too that I really appreciate that they've taken the considerations of the public very seriously and have made steps such as this to make changes to address the public. And I know it's not easy to balance protecting the public and also, you know, ensuring that nurses are able to recover and get back out into the work field. So yeah, that I think knowing that historically that these members were recruited from Maximus and then presented and there wasn't a lot of discussion about them, I think that is a step in the right direction. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any in-person requests for comments there in HQ?
No, we don't.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Shannon, I just have a question after hearing, you know, this discussion, and it kind of dovetails with what Vice President Patel mentioned, which is, so people can get assigned to a nursing support group.
Yes.
So do we oversee those nursing support groups at all and make sure that they're, you know, if we're assigning them and they're paying for it, do we do a little bit of oversight?
We're trying to, and if you recall at the last EIIC, one of the statements I had made that if we are requesting, as Board Member Lawler had mentioned, you know, the money portion of it, which is a big issue, that if we are requiring nurses to go to nurse support group, that this board may want to take into consideration having more of an oversight on the cost of those.
Thank you very much.
So right now, what we're doing, though, is we're just gathering information to determine where we are with each of those groups. There is over 35 nurse support groups across the state.
Great. Thanks very much. I'll look forward to hearing a report at some future meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comment on this item? Okay, we are going to go ahead and close this item and move to item 14.4. Pardon? 14.4, which is discussion and possible action about appointment of IEC members. And once again, Shannon, you're up. Thank you.
Okay, so this is going to be an interesting discussion because yesterday, as Lori just mentioned, you guys appointed two of the board members for a subcommittee to overview this. So I'm not sure where the board stands on it today, but we do have 5 individuals before you. 4 of them are new appointments, 6 individuals, 5 of them new appointments. 1 of them is a reappointment for their second term. We do have, let me put my glasses on, I can't see. We do have 1 nurse member in IEC 1. We have a public member, IEC 3, a nurse member in IEC 7, 2 nurse members in IEC 10. Those would be our new appointments. And then we have our physician member in IEC 11, which would be a reappointment, and that is Dr. Khan.
Well, I would love to hear what the board members think about this item. The thing that jumped out at me on this item was that it said, if approved, all vacancies will be filled, and I know that has been a challenge and we've spent a lot of time on it all year. So we could consider, you know, voting in favor of these members and start the new year with a completely full deck, or
Just want to mention too, that if you'll notice, 2 of the new appointments are for IEC 10, which means currently we only have 3, which would
Okay.
just make a quorum. So if we
Yeah.
have 1 absence, we do have to cancel those meetings and reschedule them.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
I also wanted to put a little bee in your guys' ear. We may be considering opening new IECs next year at the beginning, and establishing more so that we can facilitate this process to move faster. So we're not stable. So even though we were full, if you vote these in today, we can have vacancies as early as tomorrow.
Good. Okay. Thank you. I'd love to hear from board members on this. And of course, our remote members are welcome to chime in also. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Lawler.
Thank you. I have to say in a comment, I'm torn because before I just heard those remarks, I wanted to recommend using this list as the pilot for our new subcommittee and our 2 board members on it to try out their uh, evaluation skills on getting new board members. But it sounds like there is an urgency that is requiring at least some of them to be filled right away. So maybe at the start of the year, when we know we're going to have new vacancies, that's the time to pilot our new board members' adventure into this arena.
Thank you very much for that comment.
And as a non-board member, if I can support David's comment, I would ask you greatly, please, to consider the need of having those quorums. We had 2 meetings just recently held that we had to cancel quorum. We had to cancel an entire day because we didn't have quorum. We've had some medical issues. We've had some resignations, and those happen out of the blue. And we might have 20 participants waiting to be heard, and we have to now cancel those 20 and try to get them another slot. And then when we're dealing with people that say, I had to wait a month, I had to wait 3 months, I had to wait 6 months to be seen, please take that into consideration. We're moving as quickly as we can to get the new board process. I would really beg of you guys not to cause a delay between now and February when we can appoint new members.
Thank you very much. That's useful information. Shannon, how often do IEC committees have to stop their work because they
have to
don't have a
stop?
quorum?
Recently, and let me just go back, I'll explain. So prior to some of these changes that start occurring, is one of the very first things that we identified is that we had IEC members that were serving more than 2 4-year terms. Obviously, that is not within the law. And so we had to stop that. And so as you guys remember, a year or so, about a year and a half ago, we were in very, we were definitely in recruitment phase at that point. We had to recruit more than 20 of our IEC members, and we have 45. So to recruit 20, that was, almost half. And so a lot of our IEC members are newer, but when we do have those vacancies and then the other thing that we were finding is they were using substitutes. So if they didn't have quorum for an IEC, what they would do is take an IEC member from another meeting and let them sit in as a substitute. However, what we've learned is that when the board appoints them, you're appointing them to a specific IEC. And then that way they can't go sit on another IEC as a substitute. So once we found that out and we changed that, that's when the impact started with the meetings needing to be canceled based on quorum issues. It probably would have happened previously, but we had the substitute situation occurring. So I believe we've probably in the last year had to cancel maybe 3 meetings, which is significant in the fact that we've been trying to even create additional 2-day meetings instead of the 1-day meetings. We've been trying to get quorums for special meetings being held, which we've held at least 2 special meetings. Well, one is actually going to be tomorrow, and we held one a month or so ago, just to try and get this backlog of participants seen. Participants haven't been seen since 2023 still, which we still have a handful of those. So even if it's 1 meeting, it's still significant impact because the participants don't necessarily know the reason why they're being pushed to another meeting, which is, it's unfortunate, but those are the reasons for the most part. So it is a significant impact, even if it's 1 meeting.
Thank you very much. I agree with you completely. President Trujillo.
I would just like to make a comment for me that we go ahead and accept these new members.
Is that a motion?
I could read it.
I second it.
Well, there you go. So I would like to make a motion to accept appointment of Intervention Evaluation Committee members, and we have a second on the
We have a
floor.
motion and a second. Any other questions or comments from board members on this item? Yeah, go ahead, Board Member Cormack.
Thanks, Chair Nguyen. I'm very excited about this subcommittee and grateful to the 2 members who are going to serve on it. it occurs to me as I look at the list is there might be a slightly different type of interview for a reappointment than for an appointment. And it might be an opportunity for us to gather information about what's working and what's not. And I mentioned that solely so that the two board members who are going to be working on this over the next 3 months before we appoint again in February, are thinking about how the interviews will work and what we hope to learn. Thanks.
Thank you.
And so similar to what David had mentioned is we will start a pilot where the two board members will jump in and start working on the interview process as to not have any delay while we're simultaneously developing a charter that will have all these kind of thought processes in them, very defined and well planned out. And that charter will be brought forth to EIIC in January for some edits and further discussion as well. But we just don't want to delay that process, which is why David had mentioned we will pilot this. And so the two members will start this, they'll pilot, they'll get some feedback that will go into the consideration of the charter that will be presented to EIIC in January.
Great. Thank you very much. We're going to open this up for public comment and then we'll come back and vote on the motion. So board moderator, would you please take us to public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any in-person requests for comments there in HQ?
No, we don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. So we'll go ahead and take this to a vote. Member Nguyen votes yes. President Trujillo,
Trujillo votes yes.
Vice President Patel,
Patel, yes.
Board Member Dominguez,
Dominguez, yes.
Member Granowitz,
Granowitz, yes.
Board Member Lawler,
Lawler, yes.
Board Member Cormac.
Cormac, yes.
Okay, those are approved, and I'm going to, and our meeting is over. I'm going to turn it over to the president.
At this time, we are on item 15.0, and this is the adjournment of today's Day 2 meeting.
Thank
Have
you,
a
guys.
wonderful afternoon. Happy holidays to all.